what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Copyblogger podcast. My name is Tim Stoddart. I am here with my co-host, Ethan Brooks. What's up, Ethan? Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too, man. Do you does the air feel like a little bit more, I don't know, not freer, it's more like proprietary than it does usually?
Where do we start?
Congratulations,
Yeah.
man. Congratulations are in order.
Thank you. When I was at the bank and I wired over the money, my banker, his name is Jose. He's cool. He and I have kind of built a relationship since I moved here. He kept saying that, congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. And I was thinking that I should feel more like this is a celebration, but all I feel is just the work that I see in front of me and the things that I want to do. I've been very lucky, and we'll get to the point in this podcast eventually. But in the newsletter that I wrote this morning, I put a screenshot of my friend Jason, who I think where I was telling him basically the news, and then he just says, he says, "How do you eat an elephant?" And that's all that's been going through my head the last 4 days. I just keep saying, like, one bite at a time, one bite at a time. So yeah, let's jump right into it. Where do you want to start?
Why don't we start by naming the elephant? We'll tell people what's up. Because at this point you will have said it in your newsletter, but people who just listen to the podcast don't know.
Yeah, well, today's date is April 28th, 2023. And as of April 27th, 2003, I'm now the full 100% owner of Copyblogger Media, LLC. So that includes ownership of copyblogger.com. That includes some additional stake in digital commerce, which we can talk about. We don't necessarily need to. That's kind of a side thing. And a couple other domains, a couple other media assets, which I'm excited to bring back into the scope of Copyblogger. But let me tell you, this has been 2 months worth of preemptive work and preparing both for like the physical launch. I know it's a digital company, but like the actual act of launching and preparing emotionally, and it feels heavier than I expected it to. It really does. The last 2 days I've kind of just been pacing back and forth, going like, I know I need to get to work, but like I'm just not there yet. I need to continue processing this. I'm trying to give myself a little bit of permission to have grace, give myself some grace, they say. But man, it's real. It's done. Papers are signed. Money's in the bank account. I own it.
That's wild.
I'm the guy. Yeah, I'm the guy.
So for people who may not know as much about your backstory, I want to take just a second to color in some of the lines for and explain why this is like a little bit more special than just a standard acquisition, because we talk about business owners and buying and selling companies from time to time here on the podcast. And I think a lot of people listening to this probably in that world, they might be like, oh, like that's cool, but why pace around your house for 2 days? The reason that I thought this was so cool. So for people who don't know, Tim bought it was originally a minority stake.
Yeah.
Actually, let me go back even further. You got your start with Copyblogger. When you first started working online, it was like Copyblogger was the resource that you went to learn how to do that. And that was during a time in your life you were working in like a call center, right? And that kind of helped you start your business. I'm realizing now that I don't even know as much about your story, but the reality is like this website that helped you get your start in online business. Eventually you got an opportunity to get a foot in the door there. Then you became the majority owner, and now you own the entire thing. And that is like a wild story for people who are listening to this and maybe thinking kind of the same thing, which is like, I just want to get into this world. I just want to be doing this kind of work. Maybe I want to have control over my own finances or destiny or whatever you say. You did it, man. Like this is a big deal. You deserve at least one more day to process. Then you got to get back.
Thank
to work.
you. And you are totally right. So we've talked about like my personal story with my recovery and stuff a few times on this show. I try not to dive too much into it because Copyblogger is like it's a content marketing website. People aren't here to hear like my backstory about like my past and all that. But it is an important place to stamp the flag because it gives the rest of the story context. Yeah, I was uneducated, super broke, like in trouble with the law, basically got kicked out of the state of Pennsylvania, sleeping on my cousin's couch in Florida, trying to sober up. And I was working in a call center and I was making 120 calls a day, getting hung up on all the time, which by the way is still also one of the best things that ever happened to me. If anybody wants to get a start, nobody wants to hear this, but my suggestion is go work at a call center and get hung up on 120 times a day because it teaches you so much. Nonetheless, while I was doing that, I was building Sober Nation. I was building my first website. And I read every single thing I could on Copyblogger. I listened to every podcast. I would listen to it on the bus to work. I listened to it as soon as I got home. It really was the North Star that gave me something to aspire to. I knew I could write. Like I was very, very unconfident at this time in my life. And basically my whole life up until that point. But I just always knew I could write. It was one of the things that I just felt confident in. And I said, I can do this. Like this is proof that I can make something of myself by being a writer. And that's all I did. It was so blatantly a ripoff. So if you go back to old Sober Nation articles, like I would wake up in the morning and the article for Copyblogger would be like 5 ways to support your fellow writer, whatever. I'm just making that up. And so I would go to Sober Nation and I would be like, 5 ways to support your friend who is struggling with addiction. And like it was so blatant. I would rip off the whole thing with the headers, the bullet points, everything. It taught me how to format content. It taught me how to about headers. It taught me SEO. It taught me everything I know, really. So yeah, it wasn't that it just gave me my start. Like Copyblogger was my start. There would be nothing if I didn't have that as not only a resource, but like a sense of hope. And so yeah, come in full circle to know that it feels exciting from a business standpoint, but I also feel this like sense of responsibility because there is a me 12 years ago that's out there right now looking up to me the same way I was looking up to Brian Clark, just going like, oh well, this guy can do it. I'm just gonna do exactly what he does. And I'm not saying that to be like egotistical. I'm just saying that there's an audience around what we do now. And so there is a me from like 12 or 13 years ago that's looking at what I do and what you do and saying like, these guys are doing it. I think I can do it too. And so I feel like a real responsibility to continue pushing that message forward.
Ugh. How do you deal with that? The the pressure of knowing that you're somebody else's Brian Clark.
Not well. Really, like not well. Um, I put a lot of pressure on myself anyway, right? Just as part of my personality. But I think I deal with it by so it's Friday, obviously, and Friday is newsletter day, which means I'm up at 4:30 in the morning every Friday because it's the only quiet time I have. And I deal with it by having that cup of coffee at 4:30 in the morning on Friday and saying to myself, I have to write this thing. I have to. I have no choice because I have to publish every Friday at 7 a.m. Mountain Time. Because if I don't, somebody's going to be waiting for it and they're not going to get it. And again, that sounds egotistical, but I'm telling you, every single Friday I get replies back that says, man, I look forward to your newsletter every Friday. Like, thank you so much. What you're doing is really helping me. Thank you so much. And so I do feel the pressure, but I deal with it by just showing up. Like really, it's not more complicated than that. Just show up.
Yeah, I like that. Just do the work.
Yeah.
That's like such an important thing to remember. We touched on this a little bit last week with that little like Twitter thread that I had done over at Hampton that did really well. And I kind of joked. I said, something along the lines of, I'm trying not to think too much about this, because if you like focus on the fact that it did well, you'll be intimidated out of doing the next one.
Yeah.
And I think what you just said is the solution for that too. In a lot of ways, I guess just focusing on the work is like the cure all for the different types of intimidation you feel in this line of work.
Agree totally. And it's funny you say that because I'm reading Linchpin again from Seth Godin to remind myself as of right now that the results come, the results are a part of the process. There's a difference between a professional and an amateur, and the only difference is the professional shows up to do the work when he or she is expected to. And so I'm really, really reminding myself right now to be a linchpin. You know, it's not about anything other than making myself indispensable through the process of continuously showing up and doing the work that is required of me. So I mean, so yeah, like I'm glad that we're talking about this. We have a bunch of stuff that we plan on, but this whole week especially has been just way more emotional than I expected it to be. So in a way, it's kind of a nice release just sitting here chatting with you about it because nobody else understands about what it's like, you know? Shit.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm really stoked for you. Congratulations. You know what I just figured out too, or I just saw from realized, I guess, while you were telling this story. I've always thought it was kind of interesting that Copyblogger's name was Copyblogger because of the exercise of copy work, and
Yeah.
how like you can become a better blogger by copying other bloggers. And that's exactly what you did. You copied Copyblogger. You copy work, copied Copyblogger. And
Dude, I
now you
know.
own it.
Yeah. Like it's so ridiculously cyclical that it's kind of one of those things where it's like that Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other, you know, and
Yeah.
then my brain breaks and I have to just focus on the next piece.
Makes me wonder who's gonna buy it from you. There's somebody out there right now listening to this that's gonna buy it from you. You know, that'd be pretty rad.
Um, yeah, I definitely think about that. Um, I do. I don't. My end goal is to sell it. I think it positions itself really, really well for where we are over the next 10 years. And there's definitely going to be a lot of winners and losers over the next 10 years because like money just isn't free anymore. So the real businesses with real products are going to be the ones that win. And so my sort of back of the head goal is to make sure I always maintain the positioning of the brand so that when the right opportunity comes around, I'll know, right? Like I don't know who it's going to be, obviously, but that's my plan. I think like 4 or 5 years or so. That's what I'm hoping to do.
That's an interesting point too. What you said about like, you know, it positions us nicely for where we're going over the next couple of years,
Yeah.
because it's such an interesting landscape. So I don't know, man. What do you think about that when people say like, "Oh, blog"? I mean, I know you're obviously bought in on blogging because you just bought Copyblogger, but why? Why are people wrong when they say that blogging is dead these days?
Well, there's two sides to this story. People have to remember that 15 years ago, blogs were social media. So the example that I've used 1,000 times is Seth Godin, but that's not the only one. You know, there's a guy named Fred Wilson who's a real famous VC. He had like a daily blog that he would do this idea of just short posts and musings basically through daily blogging. A lot of them were on Tumblr back in the day. Tumblr actually used to be a blog. Same thing with Blogspot. It wasn't what we think of now. It was very much me. When I say me, I mean like metaphorically me, people just communicating the way that they do now on social media, but through blogs and through RSS feeds. And so I don't think that is coming back anytime soon. It just doesn't make any sense. It's so much easier for people to do it through other mediums, a podcast included. But what online content written and published on a website does really well, better than social media or anything, is it draws people to you who are looking for exactly what it is that you offer. And so that's why client service work, that's why blogging and creating websites where the content is hosted on an actual website is so freaking effective for people that are trying to land clients. Like it's not the thing where, if you're going to sell a $150 course about Twitter, how to grow a Twitter following, and then you post it all on Twitter, and then you take screenshots of your Twitter, and then you sell a course about Twitter. It's not going to be like that. It's much more real business oriented, because if, let's say you're a wedding photographer and you are trying to get more deals, you're trying to land more clients. Well, the people that are looking for your services aren't going to go to Twitter, and they're not going to go to LinkedIn, and they're not going to go to Instagram. They're going to go to Google, and they're going to say best wedding photographer in Nashville, let's say. And so if you get there and if you own that landscape, you're going to be swimming in business. And that is not going away anytime soon. And so many people forget, like, the American economy, well, the world economy, I should say the Western economy, is built around small businesses doing service-based work for clients. And that is Copyblogger. That's what it always meant to me. That's how I built Stodzy. That's how I built Server Nation in a large regard, which is still, it's a little bit of a different model, but it's still basically client service work. I'm working directly with clients who find me through the content that I create. And like, that's the other thing, is that's what most people want, actually. The majority of people don't want to be TikTok influencers. They don't want to be YouTube stars. They don't want to be walking around their neighborhood holding their cell phone in front of them. It's not what we want to do. It really isn't. Most people want to do work that they love for clients that respect them and pay them well, and then live their lives.
Yeah.
Really. And so that's that's why content marketing is still so freaking important, because if you can position yourself to own that sort of digital real estate, let's call it, for your service to attract the right clients, then your business is going to crush it. And that's really what I'm working towards.
Dig it, man. I dig it. You
What do you
want to
think?
know something that's interesting
Yeah.
about the changing landscape? A friend of ours, Alexis Grant,
Yeah.
she runs for people who don't know her, a blog called They Got Acquired, which is all about people who sell their companies. She told me last week that for the very first time, somebody got in touch with her, and when she asked, "How'd you hear about us?" they said, "Chat GPT."
How's that possible, though?
I don't know.
You
I
don't
don't
know?
know because I don't know. I mean, 2020, I think Chat GPT goes up to, or GPT-4 is up to like 2021, right? So that would have been
Yeah,
right
exactly.
about when she launched. So theoretically, maybe there's a record of her in there. Then again, I know some people can connect GPT to the internet, right? So maybe it was just somebody who already had API access. But it made her think for the first time that maybe these AI engines aren't going to do away with search. It's just going to be another way to get discovered. The same way that, like, the Kindle didn't do away with books, you
Yeah.
know?
I think that totally. Have you gotten into Bard at all?
No, but everybody keeps talking about it. Is Bard Google's or is it
Yeah.
Bing's?
No,
Oh,
it's
okay.
Google's.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so Microsoft owns Bing, and Microsoft owns OpenAI, and OpenAI owns ChatGPT. So basically, Microsoft slash Bing has ChatGPT built into their search engine. Bard isn't released to the public yet, but I have access to it. And it's really, really interesting what they're doing, because if you were to go there and do something like a local service business, they'll list them in the AI results, I suppose. And then there's a link at the very bottom of the text that the Bard gives you that links you out to contact information. And as soon as I saw that, I thought to myself, oh, I get it. It's just a faster way to get to the actual answer that you want. So the very, very second I saw that, I shared it with my team and I said, look, guys, we're not going out of business. Like, if anything, this is going to be more important, and we have to learn how to incorporate it into this other set of like algorithmic principles. Regardless, ChatGPT and Bard, they're like, they need databases to tap into. And I don't know if you saw that Reddit said, no, you can't tap into our data. The owners of Reddit, yeah, they killed the API into ChatGPT. Quora did the same thing. And so like soon we're gonna run into a situation where there's gonna be limits to the data that it can tap into. And not only limits, there's gonna be opportunities because now it's a matter of, okay, what you can get into, there's a way to figure out how to be a good marketer within like that particular API, right? So
Mm.
if it allows into Reddit, that means that you're going to get a whole bunch of conversations around industries. That's why Google is going to have such a huge advantage because like Google owns all of their data. So they don't need Reddit, they don't need Quora, they have YouTube, they have the billions of search results that are already there. So if anything, after seeing that, I felt like Google is basically just going to wipe the floor with everybody because they have the one thing that everybody else needs, which is the data to get access to. So I think content marketing is even more relevant now than it's ever been.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's one thing that I have started to notice, um, which I don't, or I've started to suspect, and I'm not sure if this is what's happening, but I feel like things are happening so fast just in the normal work environment. Like the speed at which things are being produced and turned around to me, the rate at which people change things is so fast that it feels like more and more people are using these tools and maybe not even mentioning it.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking the other day, man, I'm like, I I I, I gotta spend some time training on this because I feel like I already feel like somebody with a horse and buggy trying to keep up with race cars, you know?
Mm.
And it's just starting. And so what I'm doing right now is trying to isolate the things that make me feel like I'm moving slow and figure out ways to outsource those to AI. But you know what I'm really kind of worried about? And I don't want to like I hope this is I know this is where this is going to go, but I hope this isn't I hope you have an option about how you actually approach this. AI is great for saving time. But where I really don't want that to go is like, great, you saved all this time. Now just do more, right? It's supposed to save
Yeah.
you time so you can spend more time like thinking and doing the things that you actually want to do. But there's something about the fact that it just handles like these kind of low level tasks for now that I think is training people to use it. And all you do is you just throughput more low level tasks. And I actually don't think that's the right solution. I don't think that's the right way to implement this. Um, I think it's much more important to like learn the skill of being able to focus on what are the high level tasks.
Yeah.
But that's tough because the low level tasks pay the bills, you know? At least they pay the bills tomorrow.
It's another reason why I feel confident in the direction of where I'm going with my own stuff, but in the context of this conversation, specifically with Copyblogger, because we've talked about this before. People are seeing these things as like as an excuse to get out of doing the annoying, boring work, right? But people forget that doing the boring, low level work is how you actually build a skill. So then what happens in a world where nobody needs to develop these skills? Well, the people that actually have the skills through the repetition have such an advantage over everybody because they're going to see the
Mhm.
forest and the trees, so to speak. Like they're going to, the skill of decision making is going to be so much more valuable than ever. And how do you get good at decision making? By making a lot of bad decisions. And if nobody's making decisions anymore, then those people that actually have the courage to expose themselves and try to make the decisions and lead, those are going to be the ones that just naturally come to the top of the marketplace because everybody else is going to be waiting for somebody to make a decision for them. And so that's why I still just, who knows what the
Dude,
future holds. I'm not trying to like be one of those future predictors like all the pundits do. I'm just saying the landscape that I see, the act of writing, the act of writing high quality, well thought out, findable content is more than just marketing. It is like the act of thinking and it's the act of problem solving within itself. And we've talked about that before, but I don't see that as something that people aren't going to need to know how to do, right? Or at least the good ones are going to know how to do it and they're going to have such a leg up over everybody.
I have kind of an interesting example of this from a recent blog post that we published. So I was working on this piece. Right now, the way we do the blog over at Hampton is they're all case studies of like members of our community.
Mm.
And they actually, we sort of have like a templatized interview and they fill out a lot of the information and then we pull it in and we kind of clean it all up and edit it and write the intro, write the title, and then publish. And I was working on this piece and it was like late at night and I was like, I couldn't think anymore. I was like, I just can't think anymore. So I just went to chat GP and I kept, by the way, the piece is about this guy who bootstrapped a video game studio to like 2 million plus in the first year. And it's super interesting because he talks about the economics of building games and they'll blow your mind, man. It's like 25 million bucks to build a high-end mobile game these days. And then they spend another
Wow.
25 million bucks on users. And it was just wild. So the numbers blew my mind. And I kept writing something like, this gaming studio bootstrapped to 2 million plus in the first year or something like, or like the fascinating economics of gaming studios. And I was like, I just don't like any of these. And so then I went to one of these GPT engines and I was just like, give me 5 titles for a blog post about a founder who started a gaming studio and then grew to blah, 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 blah. And it spit out 5 titles. And one of them was like this concept of like, game changer, how so and so like grew to 2 million plus in year one. And I was like, that's kind of cool. I do like that, like play on words. And so I played with that a little bit and then I set that as the title and I sent it to Sam. I'm like, what do you think of this? And he's like, well, I think the intro is good, but for the title, I think you could drop the whole game changer thing and just go with like this studio bootstrapped to 2 million plus in revenue. And I was like, oh my God, this is a perfect example of exactly what you just said a minute ago, which is like the people who've taken the time to make the mistakes and who can actually like who do the thing are going to continue to thrive even when other people are using these AI tools, because it's like you don't need to outsource your thinking to it. You can see what is good work and what is like not good work.
Mhm.
Um, and I just thought that was a funny example of how one little example of how the humans still beat the machine, but I didn't trust my instinct enough to be like, yeah, that's the one. And
Yeah.
it took another set of eyes to pull the trigger on that. But for me, that really drove the point home of what you said a minute ago, which is like you can't really outsource all your thinking to these things. And if you do, I think you're putting yourself at risk of actually being much more dispensable later on. Like you may face some short-term risk developing a skill set now because it's like, oh, it seems like AI could replace job. Why would I become a copywriter when AI can just copyright? But it's like, because when the power goes out, AI can't copyright. Or because if the AIs lose access to their data, they can't copyright. It's like there's 1,000 reasons why you should be able to copyright, and you can use the tools if you want to, but you need to have the core skill still,
Yeah, they're tools.
Yeah.
It's a tool, and I haven't used it to create any content yet, but that's also largely based on the fact that most of the writing that I do is about me, because I'm sharing my experiences through my blog and through my newsletter. I think I think possibly, although I'm still having a hard time seeing how there would be good use cases for it, but I wouldn't wanna write a full blog piece on a chat GPT and then have it published, because it's gonna lose all the insight.
Yeah.
It's not gonna make any sense. It's a tool to use for, like, chopping it up and cleaning up your content, I suppose, but I wouldn't wanna read it, and if I don't wanna read it, why would anybody else? That kid
Yeah,
is
I
so
really like it
cool.
for the idea generation. And actually, I was thinking this actually ties in with something that I wanted to mention. I think I mentioned this last week. Um, wasn't long enough to do a full episode on, but I spent about 15 hours breaking down how Justin Welsh does his whole thing. And I gotta say, man, I got a lot of inspiration from it for how I want to grow my personal Twitter and Hampton's blog. And this is where I actually think the AI stuff is going to be a little bit more helpful, because here's what I find with the corporate stuff. I feel less attached to it, so I'm more open to using these tools for idea
Sure,
generation.
sure.
The reality is that we're not like the content is all written by people, but I'm thinking about there's a core tenet behind the way Justin uh promotes his content that I think is so smart, which is that every piece, he calls it like this hub and spoke model. So every piece of content he writes is the hub, and that's usually his newsletter. And then there's the spokes that come off of it that are designed to drive people back to the newsletter and help grow that asset. It's a pretty
Sure.
straightforward content marketing play. But what I think his superpower is that he really systematized it in a way that a lot of people haven't. So, like, if you buy his course, you'll see he shares Notion documents where he like literally has templates for every step of the writing process. So you just like duplicate and then fill out the template, and it helps you to generate ideas and generate blog posts and content or social media content, all that kind of stuff. It's very systematized in a way that I haven't seen most people do this. But the that's the real genius of it from his perspective, or from my perspective, looking at him. So, as an example, for each blog post that he does or each newsletter that he does, he'll obviously thread it out on Twitter, but then he has like 5 or 6 other frameworks that he'll look at it through so that he can reshare the exact same content, but from a through a different lens. So one of them is contrarian take. So you like reread your newsletter and you say, what about this represents something that kind of goes against the grain of what other people believe? And maybe it's not the entire piece, but maybe there's like one little thing in there that you're like, oh, that's actually a thing that I believe that most people don't. Or another would be like listicle, right? So it's like, what about this is could be turned into a listicle? And then what he does is he'll take each one of those, create them, schedule them, and he schedules them like over many, many, many weeks so that it never really feels like he's just blasting the same piece of content at you. It almost feels like he's just kind of always talking about business stuff. But the reality is he sits down and he makes like all that stuff at once and then schedules it. I thought that was so smart. And what I'm thinking about more now is like, I really feel like the AI tools would be very helpful for brains, like as a brainstorming companion for that process of being like, hey, here's an article I wrote. Um, like, I don't know, what would be a listicle inside this article or something like that. Or take this concept, where's the contrarian take? Um, Another one that he does is like past versus present. And I'm not even sure you would need to like copy paste what the AI puts out. It's just so helpful to see ideas thrown at you and almost say, "Oh yeah, I want to run with that," or "No, that's no good." Than to just
Totally.
sit and stare at a blank page and be like, "I need a contrarian take, you know? So I feel like I don't know, I've just been thinking a lot about that. And the other thing is that it's his system requires like a decent amount of content put out. I mean, you
Yeah.
write one piece, but then you rehash that like 6 different ways. That's a
Mhm.
lot of ways to think through the same exact piece of content. And so I'm thinking about different ways these tools can be used to like lighten the lift on that. Because the reality, here's what people don't tell you about running a content business. The content's like the smallest part of what you do.
Yeah.
And it needs to get done, but like the majority of your time is taken up with other stuff. I think there's this, maybe it's just me, but like I think there's this it's not just me. There's this there's this mirage people have where it's like, I'm going to build a newsletter company, and I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to grab my coffee and I'm going to sip it slowly and write the newsletter as the day emerges, and then listen to the birds and go for a walk. It's like, that's not what happens.
It's
You
not what
can
happens at all.
definitely, yeah, I mean, you just said this. You're like, I wake up at 4:30 in the morning on Fridays because that's my only quiet time. You can have great like work life integration or whatever you want to call it. But the reality is there's so many other things that go into this, like just customer support and like setting up the little URL redirects and like all the just the little stuff that takes up more of your time. So I say all this to say that like the content is the most important part, and it's also the part that like gets fit in around everything else. It is that
Yeah.
super weird dichotomy of this industry. But I'm enthusiastic about some of these tools for like lightening the load there, I think.
Do you know what else I think is important about that? And I have a really good example. And it's something that I'm also reminding myself of as I'm envisioning the next 3 or 4 years with this, where to build a brand, you have to say the same things over and over again. And people really struggle with that because they think to themselves, oh, come on, I need new ideas. I need a fresh take. And that's not the way to be successful for two reasons. One, and Brian Clark taught me this a while ago, and it always stuck with me. He said, "There, every day somebody is seeing your stuff for the first time, and they're not seeing the thing that you wrote 2 years ago. They're seeing the thing that you wrote today. And so that person doesn't know about what you said 2 years ago. They only know what you said today. And so you have to keep repeating yourself over and over again. The second reason is because people don't actually want to be bounced around in a bunch of different directions. They want to go to somebody for something that they want somebody to trust for a really specific thing. And I have the best example of this. I don't know if you've seen Ramit Sethi has a Netflix show,
Yeah.
and his damn Netflix show is called I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which is the same name that his book was that he published, I think 15 years ago, which is the same name that his blog was, I think 20 years ago. And in his damn Netflix show, I haven't watched it, by the way, so don't call me on this at all. I know him slightly. I know a lot of him from his brand, and I guarantee you he says something like, don't make $3 decisions, make $30,000 decisions, which is an analogy where he says like people think that they're saving money by not buying lattes at Starbucks, but they never think about the decisions that have big impacts, the $30,000 impacts. And so he's been saying the same exact shit for 20 straight years. And now he's at the point where in one day he was number one on Netflix, and his book that he published 15 years ago was number one on Amazon
No
at the
way.
same time. And I was like, man, that is just such a great example about how to run these systems without getting too far ahead of yourself.
That's awesome. I had no
Isn't that
idea
so
that you got
cool?
the what'd you call that? Like the double crown?
You got the double crown, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's such a good example too. I love, and yeah, I think you're exactly right. These tools make that so much easier because they they just, I don't know, man. People are gonna laugh because it sounds like we've changed our minds on this so much. But I want to inject a little bit of nuance into the conversation and just say, like, yeah, I advocate using these for creativity and stuff like that. I would still be very skeptical of using it to pump out content. And I don't know, you and I were talking about this off mic, there is somebody, Jake Ward, who used 100% AI generated content to build the blog to 750,000 readers over the course of a year. We can include his Twitter thread on this in the show notes, but there's some part of me that still thinks like, I just don't trust it. I've seen too many things blow up in the last 3 years to trust this one with something that's as painstaking to build as a personal brand. I think it's great for creativity, for like idea generation, stuff like that. It's also very fun. But it's possible to think that and still not necessarily be on board with using it to just churn out everything that you're publishing. It's because they're not the same thing, you know?
We should have him on the show. We were talking about this before we started. It's the first example I've seen of somebody who's just blatantly honest about the fact that like, no, I hacked this entire thing together.
Yeah.
And this is the results. I'd like to ask him two questions. One, I'd like to ask the industry that he did it in, because it has to be an open industry. I'm sure there's low hanging fruit opportunities to land grab, basically. And I'm all for it. You know what I mean? If you're gonna put in some hours and make some money, like I'm all for everybody making as much money as possible, as long as they're not lying or hurting anybody. But the second part is that I would want to ask him how nervous he is about the longevity of the content that he created. Does he feel like it's going to stay there for a while? Does he feel like his website is going to continue to have success over the next, I don't know, a couple months, couple years, whatever his plans are? And like, if he knows or if he feels like it's very short-lived, is that part of his strategy? Is he just looking for little opportunities and then just bam, 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 hit it as hard as you can, squeeze all the juice out of the lemon until it doesn't work anymore? I think that'd be cool. He and I started following each other on Twitter, or excuse me, on LinkedIn, last week, I think. And so I'd be interested to have him on. I think that'd be a fun conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to hear from him too. There's so many people in the media space that are just curious about how people are thinking about this right now. I'll give one, maybe we'll wrap up here. One idea that I wish somebody would take action on. This is from back in my trends days, but I still think it's just there's so much search
Back in
traffic
your
out there
trends
that's
days,
up
you're
for
saying
grabs.
it like it's like a whole nother life back in those days.
Yeah, well, it feels like it, man. That's that startup life. Nail styles, like manicure nail styles. Dude, there is so much search volume for those. So much, and literally no competition.
Wow.
I stumbled across this because we used to use this tool called Pinterest Trends, which you can just go to trends.pinterest.com. It's a free tool they let anybody use to see what's trending on Pinterest. And for like a year, I would always, I mean, you like scroll through and you do your little exploration, and there was always some type of nail trend, like French nails, almond shaped nails, Halloween nails, Christmas nails. Like anytime something is happening, search traffic for that particular type of like manicure trend takes off. And I'd seen them piecemeal for months, and I was like, I can't just write about Halloween nails, even though it's trending. That's not like a business, you know? But I saw enough of them, and I was like, maybe if you combine them all. So I took like an afternoon and I looked into it. I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it's like, I mean, tens of thousands of searches a month, and Ahrefs ranks it like a 2 in terms of competition.
Difficulty.
Yeah, it's just so much search traffic. So I always thought it would be like it's right out there for these niche bloggers, people who like create these websites just to pull in traffic, just to monetize on like ads or affiliate sales or something like that. I think nail trends, that's wide open. All you got to do is have one of these engines like crank out content about what the different nail styles are, and post it, publish it, sell famous nail polish brands via affiliate links, and
Yeah, exactly.
and then send me a check for the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I have an actual SEO play, which I think this would potentially work for. I started a lead gen service a while ago for moving companies. People move a lot more than they used to. And as such, the moving industry is really, really weird because the people who close deals aren't actually the companies that do the moving. You know, what's the big company? Two guys in a truck, two men in a truck, something like that, right? Well, there's brokerage firms that actually middleman all the deal. So they generate their own leads. They have huge call centers. And this is true for um, uh, home moving, and it's also true for auto transport. So these brokerage companies spend a ton of money on buying leads. And so I created this website, movinglocal.org, and it was going really well. We had a buyer, but the problem was all of the lead search, or excuse me, all of the search volume was for like moving company from Austin to Denver. And so the idea was we put spreadsheets together, which was moving company for and all of the different combinations of cities that people could go to. But the content, like it was just such a huge task. It just wasn't possible. It was like 100,000 pages or something like that. And even if I'm, trying to go to Text Broker or something and trying to pay like $30 a piece for some 2-star writer, then it's still going to take me a couple years to do it. So the juice just wasn't worth the squeeze, right? But what are those kind of opportunities where, but so
Damn.
like, here's the flip side of that is that you could just as easily do it programmatically. And Starter Story, I don't know if you remember a while ago, we did this breakdown of Starter Story. That's all he did. Like there's nothing or there's not a whole lot of original stuff on that site. It's all just programmatic and user generated content. And that's why, if you remember, like the SEO tags on the website weren't actually done when we were going through it. And so there is the flip side of it. It was like, yeah, okay, cool. You can crank out 100,000 pages of content to get every combination of moving from city to city that you possibly can. Or if you just have a super talented developer, you could just programmatically build it. But then what am I going to say? You could say, or if you just have somebody that knows how to use an AI really well, they could just put the whole programmatic code together in like a couple of days as opposed to a couple months. So man, how about me just walking through that entire like complex metaphorical case
Yeah.
study within like 5 minutes?
That's a great idea, man. I feel like there's real traction there in terms of the ability to create something that'd be worth, like, be valuable. That's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, specifically with the AI, because it's just it's so well tuned for large tasks like that. Like you could just upload a spreadsheet. Column A is the from city, column B is the to city. Be like, write me
Totally.
6,000 articles about how to. Well, this is where I'm starting to get outside my knowledge sphere though, because I don't know if you'd start to run into cost problems with that. Have you seen anybody talk about that at all?
No, but that is certainly a limitation because of I haven't heard anybody talk about it. I read, or no, maybe it was on the All In podcast a couple months ago, where Friedberg was talking about just the electricity demand and the data demand that is being put on these systems right now, which is a huge deal because the scale isn't actually there yet for um for these I don't know the what I'm looking for is like the server speed and all the electricity that they need to hit these protocols. Excuse me. God, took me forever to get that. So the demand on the protocols is so high that it's not actually there.
Hmm,
And I don't
fascinating.
know though. Maybe we can do this as like a little case study. Maybe I'll pump out movinglocal.org. I mean, I'm looking at the site right now. It's still large and in charge, and it's still a banger of a website. It's just, damn, I don't know. Should I give it a try?
I mean, yeah, dude. I'm not gonna tell you no, but give yourself like
Uh,
a limit. Give yourself some kind of limit. Like, I mean, you you just bought an entire company. So
Yeah, that's exactly the first thing that popped into my head. I was like, wait, no, don't do anything. What
I'm
are
gonna
you
buy an
talking about?
entire company focused on blogging and then use AI to build a moving company.
Yeah, that'd be
um,
funny.
could be fun though.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm interested in it. I mean, all right, let's wrap this thing up. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you to everybody that sent me emails in reply to my newsletter this morning where I made the official announcement. It really is a dream come true. I'm super excited from a business standpoint, excited slash terrified from the standpoint of like living up to the expectation I have in my head. And
Yeah, you're gonna
it's
crush it, man.
it doesn't matter. It's too late now. It's done. So I got no choice. But thank you. Yeah,
Go check out copybloggeracademy.com so that you can fund our lifestyle.
please do. Yeah, we need that. We need that.
All right, man. Well, it was great chatting with you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will talk to you next week, and holler at us on Twitter or holler at Jake Ward and tell him to come on the show. Let him know.
Idea. We're coming for you, Jake.
All right. Later, man.
See ya.